I get it. You're standing in the field with a notebook, a coffee-stained map, and a growing dread that the next piece of gear you spend money on might end up sitting in a case, never really used. The RTK GNSS survey market is littered with devices that promise millimeter-level accuracy but then fall short when you actually need to lock onto a satellite while the wind is blowing or when you're trying to get a clean data set on a rocky hillside. You don't want to waste a few $1,000s on a gadget that sounds great on paper but ends up being a headache on a real job site. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So, does the SMA26 Pro from the Switchable store deserve a spot in your toolbox, or is it another expensive piece of tech that will collect dust? Let's break down what this handheld rover actually offers, who will get the most mileage out of it, and where the trade-offs lie. First off, the biggest draw here is the Full-constellation 4G RTK claim. In practice, that means the unit can tap into GPS, GLONASS, Beidou, and Galileo satellites simultaneously, and it can pull correction data over a cellular network. For a land surveyor working in a semi-rural area where the base station is a few kilometers away, that cellular link can be a lifesaver. I've seen crews set up a static base on a farmhouse roof, let the rover pull corrections through 4G, and then walk 10 minutes into a field and still get sub-centimeter positioning. That's the kind of flexibility you need when you can't guarantee a linear site to a local reference station. The device also doubles as an Android handheld collector. That's not just a marketing buzzword, it actually lets you run the OEM survey software directly on the unit, capture waypoints, and tag photos without needing a separate tablet. I tried loading a standard field data collection app, and the touchscreen stayed responsive even when I was wearing gloves. The built-in Bluetooth makes it easy to sync the collected points with a laptop or a drone's ground control station later, which is handy if you're doing a combined aerial ground survey. The ability to act as a base station for drones is a real plus. You can set the rover as a reference point, launch a drone, and have both data streams anchored to the same coordinate system without any extra hardware. Now, let's talk about the tilt compensation. The spec says up to 2.5 centimeters tilt accuracy, which translates to the rover correcting for the angle of the antenna when you're not holding it perfectly vertical. In the field, that's the difference between a clean linear offsite measurement and a point that drifts a few centimeters because you're standing on a slope. I put the unit on a wooden stake at a 30-degree angle, and the software automatically compensated, delivering a point within the advertised tolerance. That's a genuine advantage when you're doing quick stakeout work and don't have the luxury of a tripod for every point. Durability is another claim that matters more than most people admit. The IP67 rating means you can submerge the unit in a foot of water for up to 30 minutes and it will keep working. I took it out after a sudden rainstorm, wiped it down, and the rover powered up without a glitch. The dustproof sealing also held up when I kicked up a lot of gravel while walking along a construction site. For anyone who's ever had a survey instrument ruined by a splash or a gust of sand, that robustness is a real confidence booster. All of that sounds great, but there are a few practical limits you need to know before you click Add to Cart. First, the pole is not included. The SMA26 Pro is essentially a box with a built-in antenna, and while you can hold it in your hand for short checks, the recommended workflow for precise RTK work involves mounting it on a pole or a tripod to keep the antenna level and stable. If you don't already have a compatible pole, you'll need to budget extra. Some users have reported spending $150 to $200 on a sturdy pole that can handle the device's weight and keep it from wobbling. That's an added cost that isn't mentioned in the headline price. Second, the wide protocol compatibility is more of a convenience than a game changer. The rover can ingest data from multiple GNSS constellations, which is useful, but you still need to make sure your base station or correction service speaks the same protocol. In practice, I found that some free correction services only output RTCM 2.3, while the SMA26 defaults to RTCM 3.1. You can switch it in the settings, but the menu isn't the most intuitive for someone who isn't used to fiddling with GNSS data formats. If you're a small contractor who relies on a single correction source, you might spend a few minutes troubleshooting that mismatch before you can get any useful points. Battery life is decent but worth mentioning. Under continuous RTK mode with the screen on.